All right, we are starting here. Hopefully people can hear us just fine. We're having a little computer difficulty, so we're gonna run off my laptop and I'll be turning my monitor around to pick up people talking. It is 7:15. I'm going to call the Sunderland School Committee to order. This meeting is being recorded. First order of business is reorganization. So I will look to the room and look for a nomination for chair.
I nominate Jessica Gorman.
Nominate Jeffrey Corn. Do I have a second?
A second.
Have a second. Any other nominations? Seeing none, I'll close nominations. All those in favor for Jess to be chair and are voting, so you accept.
Excellent.
Can folks hear us okay?
Yes.
Thanks. Great. All right, Jessica, go ahead.
Okay. Everybody. So reorganization, we should start with the vice chair and clerk. And actually, I'm going to take them out of order and do the clerk so somebody can start taking minutes. And if we want to nominate Amanda, who is not here, then I would just need a volunteer to take minutes for tonight. Anybody dying to be the clerk? There are only 3 school committee members here, which does give us quorum to hold this meeting, but.
I would nominate Amanda, but I can continue.
Thank you. All right.
Just because others are missing, you could elect just to move forward, just get the 3 pieces, then do all the committees later.
Let's do that. That
I
seems
mean,
much more
just
fair.
table it until the next meeting and I'll put it on the next agenda.
Okay.
Because you're missing 2 people and you have to assign positions.
Right. Okay. So, wait, do we need to do vice chair and clerk tonight, or should we wait for next month for those? What do you think?
Who's vice chair now?
Megan.
You guys can. You can put her in. You can put her in charge of that. I guess it doesn't. Nothing. There's. I don't know what would happen between now and then.
Right.
Unless you don't want to be the vice chair, and that's a different problem.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. We'll take nomination for vice chair. Or it has been Megan.
Yes.
Okay, I second. And you will accept.
I will.
All right, all in favor of Megan for vice chair? So, Lou, I nominated you and I just gonna go. And then 3-0, you were elected. But can we wait till next month for the clerk since she's just doing this tonight?
Yeah. Just.
Okay.
I would just hold all the other nomination positions.
There is a Frontier School Committee meeting that needs an appointment before our next meeting.
Yep. Good point.
Can I just appoint myself for that one meeting and then we can reopen it? Okay, I will appoint myself for the next Frontier School Committee meeting. That is not voted on. Great, we will hold the rest of them for next month. Thank you for that idea, that was a good one. Look for a motion to approve the minutes of March 11th and March 27th, 2025.
Absolutely. Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah. And I will second with a friendly amendment. These minutes were done by Amanda, but got Megan's signature on them. So can we move to approve them pending a correct signature for the archive? Does that seem appropriate? Do you accept my friendly amendment?
I do.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Approving the minutes, 3-0. Right, moving on to financial statements.
16 warrants were signed. I believe it is since the March meeting because April was joint and we didn't have financial presentations. So 16 warrants signed electronically totaling $123,370.65. I emailed out the expense reports, which were through April 30th and rapidly changing. This report shows a balance of about 115,000. I think we're around 75,000 when I look today. I put out a notice early April with a deadline of May 16th for the school to do all their primary spending. So they've been working on getting POs in for things that they need for end of year, whether it's field trips, buses, graduation celebration, all of those things. So we've eaten up some of those funds, but there is still a decent amount available. So Ben and I will be in conversation about some additional end of year spending. Although I will say that with the caveat that we do have a need to make up some expenditures already for FY26 based on the contract settlements. So the budget was approved before the contracts were settled. And while we had a placeholder in, the final contracts ended up being slightly higher than our placeholder. So we have about $80,000 in contractual wages that we have to make up between IAs and teachers. So we're going to try to save some of that money from this year. That's not all to general fund. Don't forget, some of our teachers or IAs are paid from early childhood. They might be paid from a grant. They might be paid from special ed revolving. So it's not a full hit to the budget, but we're going to try to save as much as we can to help offset. And then we'll have to look at what we can do next year. I'm not super concerned because we typically do have some additional money in the budget, whether looking at these reports, you can see we've had a lot of IA vacancies this year. We have about 45,000 in unspent IA wages. I think that's a little bit higher than normal, but we usually can recoup some money. It might just mean that end of year spending for the current year and for 26 is going to be a little bit tighter. The other thing that I wanted to mention was currently the special education line for transportation in the budget is over. We had planned on recouping some of those funds through circuit breaker extraordinary relief, and the amount that the state is funding for extraordinary relief was reduced. So we thought we were going to be able to collect somewhere around 30,000, and the actual was only about 13. So I'm taking a closer look at that. But even with that overage, the budget is still in good shape. It's just a bummer that we didn't collect as much as we thought that we would. So yeah, we'll reclass some money to school choice and do what we can to save for that contract impact for next year. FY27 will be probably a little bit of a harder conversation. I think that we have excellent contracts that were negotiated by both sides, and I'm very pleased with where our numbers landed for teachers and IAs. I think it's well deserved, and a lot of good work was put into it, but it is going to come with a little bit of hardship across the board for all 5 districts. So, you know, just conversations we have to continue to have. If you have questions, I'm happy to take them.
So, and certainly, I couldn't get online and yes. So if you've already gone over this, sorry. So when I look at that big budget, I should have done this last year better too, but I looked at that huge thing. I look at what's remaining and what you spent. So you see some places where it says, 0% left, some places say 100% left, some say 33, some, so how do we balance all of it with a few weeks to go, are any of those line items in jeopardy right now and do you move it from one to the other or what?
So
Some can, some can't.
occasionally I do move it. Like if Ben said, we need to buy more general supplies, we have money left in teacher PD so that they can do the purchase order at the school level, I will transfer funds. But there are other times that I don't. Like if we're truly over in teacher salaries, say we had a hire that was a higher step and column, if we had attrition and we're replacing a teacher, I want to see that as a negative line item so that I can remember historically what happened. So we do transfer funds in and out. I think the bigger point for you all, yes, you should absolutely ask questions if you don't understand what a line item is, especially if it's salaries and wages. Like, why are we over $50,000 on this line, or why are we under $50,000? But the bottom line budget is really what I pay most attention to. And right now we have about 80,000 remaining to get us through to the end of the year.
And that's good for 6 weeks.
It is. Most expenses are fully encumbered, like salaries and wages are fully encumbered. You know, there'll be some class coverage that we have to pay. Nature's Classroom stipends have to be paid because Nature's Classroom's happening this week. There'll be some central office expenses added, but we don't have expenses of 75,000 that are like utilities, heat. We've already gone through all of that and made sure that we had funds
And
encumbered.
transportation already taken care of, or leave enough to.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then, so you already kind of, Michelle, you already kind of got my next question. So that's where I was gonna ask. So if an item ends up with negative, and next year we might think of filling that, you know, if it's negative 3 years in a row, you're like, okay, we need to keep more.
Yep.
And if it's over budget, and this is the part that always gets challenging. If it's over, does that mean next year we better cut a little bit back? I mean, we have to look for cuts? Is that where we looked the year before? We were 50% over, so we're gonna cut.
So, yes, I will look at historical information. And if a line has been historically over by $10,000 for 3 years, we should absolutely cut that back. If a line has been, had $1,000 available for 3 years and it's the electricity line, I wouldn't recommend changing that because utilities fluctuate year to year. So it really depends on the expense account that we're looking at and how much money we're trying to recoup. We could go through your budget and pull little amounts of money from every expense account to probably save a percentage point. It's a painful exercise, but if that's the position we're in to do that versus cutting staff, that's something that we should consider.
And then the last question, because, a business manager, a principal, you guys are great. But I know you sometimes go 3 or 4 drafts and it's hard. But I know, like, you have to be careful, especially with government businesses. Sometimes if you say, no, I can cut that now, and then it stays that way for, like, I can cut that now. So what I'm saying is, how do we avoid not padding the budget so that it doesn't get cut in the future? I mean, you kind of get what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense. Like if you put in a high budget and, and then you don't spend it all and it gets cut, well, now you're not, 2 years later, you need that back.
So Sunderland doesn't have a padded budget. None of our elementary schools do. Where we capture our year-end savings are wages.
Okay.
So right now, if you look at this expense report, underneath the IAs, which is page, if anyone's looking at it, page 3, the IA account has $60,000 available. That is due to vacancies, right, absences, unpaid leaves, and the money adds up quickly. The other accounts are really not overinflated. Like, I don't add to utilities a 3% adjustment every year. Electricity is not a good example because we don't actually pay electricity here, but even the heat, I just assume unless there's been a problem from prior years, we keep that number the same. And that way we have a little bit of wiggle room at year end. Other accounts that help us out is teacher professional development. If teachers don't take advantage of the reimbursement, that's almost always an account that we can recoup some funds.
Subline item.
The
as well.
subline item,
Yeah.
although this year it is a
Yeah.
wash, but typically that is a spot where we can save money as well. But let me give you an example, Joe, of something that we can look at is the software, instructional software account has a good chunk of money left in it in the budget as it stands. That is because our curriculum director and our IT director have been talking with teachers, talking with principals about what programs we are and aren't using, and they've cut back pretty significantly. We added a ton of things during COVID, and now we're at a point of what's working and what's not working. So that's an account that we really can look at next year and say, do we need this much money? Because it has like $15,000 left in it right now.
Unless we're looking, again, I'm not, we're still some flip about the AI, because there's some articles
Yeah.
out there now where AI integrated in research into schools.
Yeah.
If that's gonna happen in the future, that's gonna be an expense. So
Yeah.
just, and then, and I didn't see it in here, maybe I missed it, the summer programs, is that a totally separate budget?
Nope, those are funded.
Yeah,
The
okay.
coding is a little bit weird by DESI. If you're looking at the expense report, it is titled,
But they're all next fiscal year, right? Because it starts after July 1st.
it is, so summer falls under other instructional services with DESI, and it's the code 2440. So if you look at that 4-digit code, our summer line is currently over in this budget by 3,500, but when the new programs start, we'll be in the new fiscal year. So July 1st, we'll have funds available. There's also been quite a few changes in our summer programming district-wide to make sure that we're really meeting the needs of students that need it the most. And I think we'll see that we shouldn't be over budget on that line moving forward.
Yeah, of course, we're better about that. When we know how much the population of that summer program will be, people are still signing up or being recommended to sign up still?
We start that process in March,
Right.
and so we have a pretty solid handle on how many students are coming. We do need to try to line up staffing first, and part of it is just because folks are looking for summer jobs.
Sure.
And then when we invite students for those programs, everyone has busy schedules in the summer, and some can commit to the 4 weeks, some 1, and anything in between. So it varies a little bit from week to week.
And do Conway, Whately, and Deerfield does? Do Conway,
Yeah,
Whately
so
also-
Conway has its own
They
program,
do.
and then Whately students go to Deerfield.
Right, thanks, I'm done.
Other questions for Shelley? Thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome.
On to principal's report.
Great. On Friday, May 2nd, Sunderland students and staff celebrated Sunderland in Action Day. This day is when we pause traditional academics and engage in various community service projects on our school campus and around town. The event this year followed one of 3 themes: campus cleanup and beautification, farm to school, and community art outreach. Students were working hard weeding, spreading soil and mulch, painting pavers and kindness rocks, planting vegetables and flowers, and picking up trash. Sunderland parent and school committee member, Miss Megan Arquin, you graced us with your presence to help with our farm to school initiative. So our back vegetable garden is thriving right now, and should be ready to go next month for our first round of salads. And we had a visit from Senator Joe Comerford, who came to see our students in action and doing those projects. So it's one of our favorite days of the school year, and special thanks to Officer Benjamin Peters for coming in and spending some time with our 2nd graders. One way we build community is through our monthly community meetings, and each grade level takes a turn leading the meeting. And in May, it was our preschoolers' turn. Student performances included the weather song and 5 green and speckled frogs. Recently, our 5th grade partnered with the University of Massachusetts Food Science Department. The department hosted our 5th graders and staff on a field trip. Students took public transportation to the college, the university. This experience aligned directly with our math curriculum, focusing on the metric system, particularly in grams and mass. Students learned the process behind making ice cream and got to sample some unique flavors of black cherry, red raspberry, Coca-Cola, pineapple, pizza, and butter. In addition to that, they had unlimited access to the Worcester Dining Hall. And there may have been a few stomach aches afterwards. And it was funny, I was talking to a caregiver that evening, and their child had come home with a plastic bag of ice cream, full of ice cream. It had melted at that point, just in case you were wondering. Yeah, it was a milkshake. And so our 5th grade teachers, Donna Carmody and Kristen Miller, organized this experience. And then, as you know, once we hit April vacation and then into May and June, the calendar is just completely jam-packed. School committee meetings, Class rosters. We begin the class roster creation in late April, early May. We send out a notification to caregivers asking for feedback on class placement. So our first round of rosters are due tomorrow. It's a big team effort in trying to create balanced classrooms with current teachers, receiving teachers, related service providers, and everyone else in between to try to make the classes as balanced as possible. We have our walk and roll to school day next week. We have our in-house strategic instructional leadership team. We're doing a staff luncheon. That's another way we just build community as a staff, is by hosting monthly lunches. And then we are in-house doing an IA Instructional Assistant Appreciation Day on the 23rd. Senior Clap Out Day is scheduled for May 30th. That is for students who are graduating from high school, whether they are graduating from Frontier or one of the surrounding high schools, Tech, Northfield, Mount Herman. All those students are welcome back, and we give them a fun send-off. We have Junior Olympics at the beginning of June, school council meetings, and Kindergarten Visitation Day. Right now, our projected incoming kindergarten class is at 14 for next year. And then we have our 6th grade graduation on June 10th. We are excited to welcome Miss Claire McFarland as our guest speaker this year. She is a graduating senior at Frontier. In years past, we have had a field day as part of one of our last school-based initiatives. This year, we are switching it to a pre-K through fun day, with the thinking that our grade 3 through 6 students have Junior Olympics over at Frontier. And so now we're having a field day specifically for our youngest learners. And that is going to be led by our 6th grade students. And then finally, on June 12th, we have our final monthly community meeting. And that's the day we use to say goodbye to our 6th graders and any retirees here. Any questions? We do. Leslie Woodline, our math interventionist, so I was going to give her a send-off at our June meeting. Yeah.
You answered my question about when is the last day of school.
June 13th, yes.
Do you want to share the good news that Senator Comer shared with us?
Sure. Earmarked for next year's budget is a monetary amount of $50,000. And that is coming from
the supplemental budget,
the
from
supplemental
the millionaire's
budget.
tax, the fair share tax.
Yeah. And so we'll be in discussion as to, I'm not sure there are any particular restrictions to
I think
that.
she said it's unrestricted, it is one-time money, so we want to
Right.
be careful with how we use it.
Right. And so we'll have to put our brains together as to how to best make use of that.
I'm sure I can come up. with
I'm
something.
sure Shelley has.
Sherry
Sorry, Beth.
already spent it.
Yeah, FY27 is looking a lot better, right? Yeah. So yeah, that was exciting. And she let us know on Inaction Day about that.
Other questions? Thanks, sir. Public comments.
Hi,
I am a parent. Also, my wife is a kindergarten teacher here. Just kind of concerned that the students' best interests here aren't really in the like top of the list of what's the school's concerned with, the school committee. My wife interviewed for the 1st grade position, didn't get it. A 2nd position came out, she wasn't even told about. Nobody cares about that class more than she does. And as everybody probably knows, like that grade level has been like probably the worst in the school. She started off with 25 kids this year, and the class got split. She got the 2nd half, and it's just been a nightmare. Like her life's been hell. But she cares about the kids, and she comes in every day. Our kids can be homesick. She comes here. And she was turned down for basically 2 positions. from strangers off the street. And we live in town. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know what to say. If anybody here has any input on that.
Hiring is not under school committee purview.
I understand that, but I know other things are, and it's, I'm just concerned as a parent more than, she can find another job. But as a parent, I just don't feel that, I think budget's more important than the actual quality of what's going on in school. Is what it seems like.
I'd be happy to talk with you about process related to all these.
And I pay taxes in the town. I know it's not a cheap town. What are they going to? Like, do we need to go to the town to get more money from school or what? But it seems like education isn't that valuable. Like, I don't know what to say. But it's just been a shot in the back here recently. That these kids that have, like, they're tough kids. Like, my wife, like, has really shaped a lot of them. She could go on for the next grade, but she's not getting an opportunity. So, I don't know.
Did it help when the classes split from 25 to 12?
It did.
Yeah,
It did.
So that was something we did ponder over and vote on.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
that
of
was-
course.
that was
It did
something
help,
that
but I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I think if a lot of other subs, she was a sub. Obviously, she was hired as a sub. A lot of other people in her position would have been gone a long time ago. She's stuck it out here.
Yeah.
She's passed other jobs in this district, thinking she'd have a job in this school. And this is where we're at. And I just want to make the public aware of that. Because I don't think anybody else knows that. Especially the parents. And the parents in the class need to know that.
Thank you for your comment. My name is Jessica and I'm the chair of the committee and I'd be happy to speak with you outside of the meeting.
Okay.
I think we also had a public comment online.
Yes, we do, Jessica.
Go
I
ahead.
don't know if my camera's gonna work, so that's okay. So hi, I'm Jody. I am the co-president of the Union 38 Educators Association and the co-chair of the negotiation committee. I just want to take a moment to share some thoughts about our last round of bargaining. Although it was challenging at times for both sides, all of our team members felt heard. We appreciate everybody's willingness to work together to create contracts that value and respect all of our members. The teacher contract passed unanimously, with people sharing that this is the best contract we have received in many cycles. The IA contract passed by over 90% of members voting in favor. They too were excited by the content of their contract and getting closer to a living wage. With all the contracts under negotiation in the surrounding towns, and some of them contentious, we feel fortunate that we worked well together, and we want to thank everybody involved. So just a big thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Greater. I was also pleased with how it turned out, so thank you for all of the effort that you put into it, and particularly want to thank Shelley and Darius, who did most of the work on our side.
Yes, thank you, Shelley. It was a great process.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comments? Moving on, what do we want to say about the regionalization conversation?
Yeah, so I threw that on the agenda. We did at the joint meeting have a Attorney Dupree give us a kind of rundown of what regionalization would look like. I wanted a chance to bring it back to this committee for comment. We have, I'm recommending kind of like for next step is to look at the finances of what regionalization would be from an envelope. Like I say, when I say an envelope finances, like getting a general overview, because there's, throughout the conversation of it, it immediately comes forward that it's too expensive, especially when we talk about insurance and those kind of things. And before we go ahead and start putting a lot of time and effort towards a regionalization, I think we should really get focused on like, what is the actual cost going to be and is it feasible? So that's my recommendation, but I did put it on the agenda because we had the joint meeting. There's 20 something people in the room. Not everybody could give their thoughts. And so That's the main reason I'm here, but giving direction of like what next steps are. I think looking at I call it a light data dive. We're not going to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars to, get numbers of those sorts, but we can get ideas of, what is the insurance difference between the towns? What would it take to bring it up to if you were to regionalize with Frontier in their insurance level? Those initial costs and ongoing costs. And then Shelley brought up, and in another meeting as well about, how does rural aid get changed if you become a region? How does, other kind of funding sources from the state, how does that get affected? Not just regional transportation, but those other things. And so kind of just getting an overall idea of what does that mean financially, and bring that back to the committee to have a discussion whether or not, to create a subcommittee of the 5 committees for regionalization, and that would be the next kind of like official step to do. But I think there's so much information, misinformation, and some of the misinformation is not all misinformation about the expense of it. And I think the cost of it would derail it immediately in a talking circle. So I think we need to actually have a close look at what those costs are. That's my recommendation.
When would you expect to have those estimates, figures?
We were shooting for the fall,
Okay.
you know.
So maybe we'll bring a conversation back as well.
Right. And so we would come by, in the fall, come back with a kind of a short report regarding what we see as the challenges financially. Because there are different ways to solve some of those challenges, but until you have that initial number, and what those challenges mean, I think that's my recommendation of kind of next steps.
I'm gonna play, confused. So the high school is regionalized. Correct.
Correct.
Towns, right? So we're talking about regionalizing the elementary school. Is that really
Correct.
what we're saying? And y'all know, there's so many different forms of regionalized schools and districts in this state.
Mhm.
And right now, we're really one of 7 that are similar, yet even those are very different. Where will we look to help model, or look into this deeper? Like, what is it like for other districts who've done this? Or are we going to be pretty unique?
So were you there for Russ's presentation?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, okay. So he just kind of gave an overview of how he led the regionalization talk and how financially you can save, towns can remain in control of their elementary schools, which has always been one of the biggest barriers to regionalization, the concern of losing a school or losing control financially of that school as being one of the biggest cost things in town. So he developed 2 regional plans where it addresses that. So that would be the model. That would try to be kind of the model. We our own. Everyone's its own model, right? Because the amount of towns, the makeup of each town, that kind of thing. So, yes, we'd be working with his legal help on that. And there's a lot of challenges. Again, this process is years.
Yes.
And I think that right now we have the stability in the district. I think to kind of look at it. I don't know if we can get there, but I think. Right now, it's set up in such a way that it doesn't operate efficient, let alone efficiency. The oversight is very difficult too. And I've kind of talked. The more the first couple of years you try to figure out this job as a superintendent, but after a while, I kind of look and there's I report to 24 different people. You know what I mean? And when you talk about initiatives or change and trying to navigate the different needs of the community in different towns. It could very easily, it runs well because we have good school committee members. And I don't just say that because you're my bosses, but we do have people that work together well and that kind of thing. But I've watched it fall apart in other districts where people could come in with agendas and could care less about working together and those kind of things. It could really, even when we talked tonight about negotiation and the agreement with the teachers is also kind of, it's finite that we work together, but we're really separate, and things could very easily, fall off the rails there. And so I think it behooves us to try to improve it. Let alone, Shelley and my jobs directly regarding, Shelley has to do end of year reports. She does 5 of them, and and the average district does 1. You know, I'm on my second school committee meeting this evening after being at work today. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, it just doesn't, you know, not every, you're not, you know, it's, I think it's something that needs to be improved.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's a challenge. And one thing that I didn't hear Russ talk about, but also, and you have four principals getting four principal four principal salaries, and administratively, it's cost heavy, there's no question. But you have four towns that are very unique, and the part I didn't hear him talk about though was population predictions, you know, kind of in, you know, we know right now we have a decreasing population of kids in this area, but, you know, just crazy things happen, and we've heard the new tax incentives for having kids could increase more kids. I've been seeing that in one of the bills that's being proposed. But, you know, we have an aging population in these four towns that is still well enough and healthy enough to live in their homes. But at some point, they're not going to be, and a lot of their families don't live in there. Like, what's going to happen in their homes? Are they going to be affordable for, I'm talking a 10-year, 20-year plan down the road? You know, and I know regionalization, we're looking 4 or 5 years before we probably get to that point. But are we looking at the population changes 10 years from now, 20 years? Are we going to need these buildings again? Or is there going to be a boom of kids that are going to need to be educated? I don't know. Are those part of the discussion when you look at?
Well, I don't think we're talking about closing any of
Right.
the elementary schools. We're talking about maintaining them, which wouldn't have cost savings. So this is going to be a challenging conversation because it's going to cost us money. Typically, towns regionalize because they're in financial crisis and they can't afford to keep their elementary schools open or whatever schools open. We're not in that position. So that's a different conversation, I think. You know, and if we did regionalize now and had the 4 schools for 10 years and there was a population boom, then you're talking about building a new building and, you know, consolidating in a different way. But I think that's so far ahead of us personally that I'm not sure that we.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
the regionalization discussion, the rabbit holes that you can go down with all the different things of pluses and minuses. I mean, I also look at, like, you know, looking at special education alone, right? We develop programs in schools to meet the needs of the population of town. And then those programs lose residents because they graduate out.
Right.
And or you don't have a program in one school and you actually have to pay tuition if you're going to send a child from this school to a child to another school that has a program. So we're paying tuition within our own. I mean, Shelley's sitting at her desk with money in one hand, then she puts it in the other hand, right? But it is happening that way. Whereas if you regionalize, we have, you know, let's say if you had in our smaller schools where they need, you know, OT or PT services for a, you know, for special, you know, for a student, you know, we have to hire 1 day a week. It's very hard to find a person to come in 1 day a week. You can't even hire an assistant to come 1 day a week because they have to be working under somebody. And that person may work in 3 different school buildings and receive 3 different checks. It's like, and it's, you know, it asks, and it's a lot on them as well for job security and whatnot happens from year to years. So there's a lot of loose pieces as to why it regionalized. But Shelley's right in the sense of a lot of times regionalization comes under something shiny, like a new building. You know, usually you see it with high schools. We'll build a new high school if we regionalize, and that's not what's coming with this. So it's a harder sell to the community to say, hey, you know, we're going to increase efficiencies and, you know, those kind of things. And there may be some savings long term, but not millions of dollars out of that. And that's going to be, that's going to have to be discussed. You know what I mean? I also, you know, we should keep an eye on what's going up north. There's 6 towns that are now talking about regionalization due to their size. You know, you can see what's going to happen up there because they're trying to find answers to keep their schools open.
Yes.
So there'll be a lot of talk about regionalization in the next 5 years in this area.
That's really helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, the spin is really going to be about how it makes our district better.
Mm-hmm.
How does it better our staff, and how does it better our students, and how does it better our families? And that is going to cost us money and may not be affordable. I think that first step, like Darren said, with the insurance is, we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars, sort of shuts the conversation down.
Any other questions or comments on it for today? No, we'll come back to the conclusion. Thanks. The next two items on the agenda are voting on the settlement agreements with the teachers and the IAs. I assume y'all would like an executive session to talk about details before we vote? Y'all are just ready to vote, we can just do it. I was in the negotiations, I know what's going on.
Mhm.
Would you like an executive session to discuss it? It would be typical for us to just go through item by item of what was discussed and negotiated, but it's up to you all.
If that's typical, then we probably should do that, you know. I'm
Okay,
curious,
that's-
yeah, and we don't have to
Okay.
do it a long time, but we could quickly hear what the points were.
Okay, so then, if nobody objects, I think I will reorder the agenda so we can do
At the end.
reports now. Then the executive session, then voting on those and then adjourn. So, we're on to reports. Committee and sheriff reports. Megan, you want to report on your progress?
The farm to school committee, obviously newly forming, won a grant and we're in action with Sunderland schools now. And next year, pushing into the rest of the schools in the district and trying to continue to build this program, from the ground up. There. Yes, I'm gonna be the garden coordinator for two of the schools, one of them being Sunderland, and the other one, maybe waiting, but
Great.
there's a couple other people on that staffing, and we'll have a principal meeting next week, which I'm excited for, and just continue to build this conversation and hope to see it grow and become something that's sustainable.
Can I ask who initiated and wrote the grant?
It was Teresa Carter from the Conway School,
Okay.
who's the chair of the PTO up there, and Kate Stafford kind of developed the idea and pulled Patrick, the director, into that. But he and I have been in touch about some food access stuff, and so I came into that, and it's kind of,
It's a 1-year grant?
that was a learning grant, and then we won the Mass Fresh Core Grant, which was a 2-year grant award. And this will be the end of the first year, which was exciting. It definitely came late, and we're trying to spend the money and time. So next year we can bring in some great programs.
Well done.
It's exciting. Amazing, but it's exciting.
My kids came in. It's good.
Yeah, it's been fun to plug it in on places so far.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of reports. Joe, do you want to talk about the Day on the Hill?
You're gonna talk about it too, or? So I mean, I can have my perspective, you know,
We attended together.
Yeah,
This
we
is
did.
the Massachusetts Association of School Committees Day on the Hill, also known as Lobby Day. So last week, Joe and I were in Boston.
And Jess was full because she was driving students, which was great. So thank you for doing that. So I hitched a ride with the Greenfield School Committee, which was great because I got to learn about the 6 schools that are a little bit north of this, talking about what they're doing and how they're trying to manage not having enough funds. So I saw a whole nother side. So just how fortunate we are and how thankful, again, as I always say, you know, the management of funds in this district is excellent. The staffing is excellent. And they told me, Greenfield gets a little side from the Day of the Hill, but I think it was the middle school, including high school, they don't have enough funds to support social studies for a full year for kids. That's hard to hear, you know, and let alone the building they've got, the beautiful Greenfield High School they built has beautiful rooms for band and arts and co-curriculars, but they don't have money to fund staffing to use it. So they're struggling. And so it just made me feel much more fortunate where we are. On the Hill, I tried to gravitate towards Eastern looking officials. So whenever I saw a suit and tie, I said, I'm going to sit with them and talk with them because they're probably from, you know, a wealthy district. And because I wanted to, you know, hear what they have and what they deal with. And it's interesting, I talk transportation because that's something, you know, I bring up a lot, like why we pay so much for this. I bet it's cheaper out there. It's not. They're still dealing with the same problems. They still have, you know, one contract or one company that they contract with who can raise what they want within reason. But I talked to the Franklin superintendent. They had a 3% raise, then a 5% raise, and then 8, and then they had a contract signed for 2 years for 10 and 10. Then I took it, said, because I don't know what the way it's going, the next year might be 12 or 13 or 14. So he just said, I took 2 years at 10% raise because when I know what I have, I can budget ahead for that. I know what's coming. So they also talked about the other one, special ed transportation, which I want to make sure I mention that I support that. The kids need to get to where they get the best education, but it's expensive at between $300 and $400 a day. So I thought, okay, they're there in Boston. They probably just have to drive 2 miles. It's still $300, $400 a day for a vehicle because the way you have to contract it and hire someone. And then one superintendent I talked to, they actually bought vehicles. Said, look, I'm just going to buy vehicles and we'll have a driver. Well, then the problem is, what if that driver's out sick like that? Now you can't find a driver who's registered who's allowed to take the kids. And I have one other problem. So there's no easy solution. It was interesting to hear that. I also talked about, trying to foster relationships for rural aid support. Saying like, you understand what we're dealing with out here. We need help. You need to talk to your representatives to say that we need to share the wealth. It is a commonwealth. And so I built those relationships. I hope I can, continue to foster them. There's some superintendents and some committee members, chairs. So it was really helpful, and I got to go to. I know Jess is going to talk to the next. We'll talk to some representatives.
Yeah, so I had meetings that day. Natalie Blay arranged for Mohawk Trail officials and me to speak with the new House Chair of the Joint Committee on Education, so State Rep Ken Gordon. We talked to him about rural needs, and he really seemed like he got it, and he had questions, so it was a really good meeting. And then Joe and I were both in a meeting that Joe Comerford's office arranged with Monique Ching, who is an aide to Senate President Karen Spilka, so that we could impress on her the needs for moving up an overhaul of Chapter 70 funding formulas. So it was good to have those conversations. Earlier this week, I also testified at a bill hearing on behalf of a bill that would start that process to reopen Chapter 70, which is not we could fix Chapter 70 for next week situation. It is, if they pass this bill this session, then they would have a commission that would last for over 2 years to study the needs. And then once they've reported out on what are the needs or what is sort of not happening appropriately with our current Chapter 70, then the negotiations of a new formula and a new bill would happen. And then it would take years for that to get passed and implemented. So it is still a very long, slow process ahead. So we might as well start it now. There is opposition from House leadership to starting that because we haven't fully implemented the Student Opportunity Act yet. They're saying, why would we start that if we haven't gotten through year 7 of the Student Opportunity Act? Well, because it's already a multi-year process. We should start it now. We already know a lot of things that aren't working. Those are the things I wanted to report on.
And governors in the same argument. We're not saying, okay, you need to finish this before we go to the next step, from what I was hearing.
Right.
And so that doesn't help. But I just was very good at presenting and acknowledging that, if they wait to do the study until after this is over, there's going to be a couple of gap years before there's nothing except for Chapter 70. So there was a strong push to change that for them. And that's from the East people, Eastern people too, I talked to.
Any other committee reports?
The collaborative is struggling, and we're kind of in the middle of stuff right now. Next week is the first run of the finance committee will hear the budget reports draft, and then it'll go to the collaborative committee, and then it'll come back for final vote in June. But they have to make more cuts. They already cut 1.8 million in January. There's going to be some more cuts. They're looking at the best ways that they can be most efficient, but they're also looking for new venues to be of service to RIC to create more income. So I'll know more after the next couple of meetings, but they had to make some more cuts for more staff for next year.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
To all of you. The first thing on the thing is just announcing that we hired our new early childhood director, Maren Law, and she will start July 1. There'll be some carryover days in where she'll be working in the district on, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up so I can read off it, in June. So happy about that. And then obviously Kim McCarthy, who's retiring, she's got big shoes to fill, as Kim's been with our district in multiple roles for many years. And so we'll be saying farewell to Kim, but she'll be around, so we'll see her around. But I hope she enjoys her retirement. I moved forward with the evaluation of the Director of Student Services, Karen Ferrandino. The role kind of operates in a unique space where the school committee hires, but she has not been evaluated in recent years. So I did do a summative evaluation for this year, but moving next year, I'll follow the DESE recommended evaluation process. The strategic plan, if you haven't filled out the SWOT analysis and still want to, the link is still open. We have been incorporating your SWOT ideas as they've been coming in. I'm just kind of mentioning out there that we do have administrative workshops this summer, and we'll be focusing one of our new topics of that will be looking at AI in our schools. What does that mean? And it's already here, but really kind of looking at policy that we'll be bringing to folks. Next year, we did send a group of administrators out to learn more about policy and AI in schools. That will then probably turn into something where we will get teachers involved to look at, what instruction looks like with AI, what it's, and how do we use it. And I doubt that's going to be a one and done, because as it continues to evolve, we're going to have to continue to evolve. And then the last thing on this sheet is I gave a kind of a budget summary where the different the governor's House and Senate budgets are right now. It's the Senate is starting debate next week. Yep. And so it just kind of shows, kind of get an idea where things are going as they kind of play the game of raising one and dropping another and kind of going back and forth. But and I just kind of put a little comments on that. And the fair share revenues that have recently come out have kind of changed a lot of those conversations. So it's been a lot to keep up with. And so we'll share more the next meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that chart was nice. I've heard all those numbers. We heard a lot of them last week, but they're not all together in the chart. So someone help me. So the Senate is one place, the House is another place, the governor is someplace else. They just keep deliberating back and forth until they all come together and agree at the same number?
No, so the governor's budget is now obsolete.
Okay.
She doesn't actually get to set the budget, it is up to the legislature. I believe the Senate budget has not passed amendments yet. Is that right?
So they're debating it.
Yeah.
You're debating it starting on the 20th.
Right. I believe that I know from, I should have showed this during the committee update. I know from Senator Comerford's chief of staff that, who was it? Senator Jason Lewis added an amendment to the budget to reopen Chapter 70. That is Senator Comerford's top priority amendment. So they're still doing that. But once the Senate passes theirs, top 6 legislators go into a back room. They do not want input from the public. They get to decide how to reconcile the House and the Senate budget.
So it's going to come someplace between the Senate and the House. No, they
I
want to be outside those boundaries.
wouldn't think so.
They have to come.
But yeah, I mean, right now, when they're amending the Senate budget, that's the chance for some of these numbers, the last chance for some of these numbers to move higher.
But when those people hit the room, it's between, okay, House is here, Senate's here, let's come to agree.
Yeah.
And that, we know that by end of June?
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah, it's when they're supposed to, but it always takes a little bit longer, and then
It's been
and
honest.
then it goes
Yeah.
then it'll go before the governor too.
Yeah, she's got line item veto power.
I know. Thank you.
All right, we've done our report. Any questions for Darius about his report? Sorry. All right, we've done our report. So the next thing is executive session, which is session that takes place out of the public eye. So we will be turning off the Google Meet, and we need to ask members of the public to leave so that we can have our private executive session. So, and then we will come back to public session to vote. We need a motion using this language for executive session.
Right here, yeah, we'll make
A motion to enter executive session pursuant.
okay, make a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Master General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, teachers, and instructional assistants.
Yeah. Thank you for the motion. Need a second?
I'll second the motion, it's less to say.
Yeah. Nice. So then we need a roll call vote. Do I? Yes. Joe?
Yes.
Megan? Yes. Jessica, yes. 4-0. We are going into executive session. We will return to public session to vote.
Unless you want.
So in summary, you got to do it.
We just voted in the contract. Moved by Megan, seconded by Joe. Voted in unanimously. And I'm looking for a motion to approve the settlement agreements between the Conway, Deerfield, Sunderland, and Whitney School District School Committees and the Union 38 Educators Teacher Contract for the 2025 through 28 contract years, and to authorize the chairs of the school committees to sign contracts.
So moved.
You do it a second.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. We have approved the teacher contract. Thank you to all of our teachers and IAs for your commitment to our students and our community. We really appreciate what you do. If there is no further discussion, we can take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. No, try to second that. In my goal.
All right. All in favor? 4-0. We are adjourned at 8:39 p.m.